Okay, first question is, do we have audio? Okay, first question. Yes, we do. All right, just give it a few minutes if some people want to show up or not. Always good to leave the stream running at the beginning just to see if people turn up. I mean, ideally, that's the point. We have more and more people kind of interacting with each other. It's not just me talking into thin air, hopefully. All right, just give it like a couple of minutes and then I'll start. Because I don't have all day also. Things to do, things to do. Okay, while waiting, I'm just gonna close some windows here that don't really need to be open anymore. Okay. All right. Okay, let's start. Okay, so let's do a 3, 2, 1. And I notice there's some kind of hair near the lens, which is never a good thing at all. All right. Oh, I forgot to turn on the light, so that's why it looks dark there. Good enough. Okay, so let's get this baby on the road. All right, so 3, 2, 1. Everyone, and welcome to another interesting episode of Age of Reason. Today is Friday. I know it's Friday, November 16th, 2018. This is episode 34. This is the official episode, not the news. Before I go into the show, I'd like to mention my book once again, Beyond the Obscure. Please get it. It's a very interesting book. I spent a lot of time working on it. And well, actually, just talking about the book, there was something quite interesting, and I commented on it. And well, here's what I wrote basically. It's with my dad. My dad got it, of course, and my mom as well. I said, you know, thanks for getting my book, but it's just interesting that I have nearly 230 contacts on Facebook, and I know that's not a lot. Some people have the maximum allowed, 5,000. And Age of Reason page has about 16,000 followers. And really, nobody's buying it? That's just kind of odd. So I said, you know, I don't expect to become a best-selling author anytime soon, but I mean, come on, this is just a little bit ridiculous. What are people buying instead? So my dad said, and I totally agree with what he says here. He says, indeed, this is very disappointing, but the truth is that many don't care, and many don't think for a second that there's a very simple and not expensive way to acknowledge the efforts and the time of a person who took pains to create something. Totally agree with that. And it's just a shame that these days, you know, if you're a celebrity, even if you're caught doing bad stuff later, it doesn't matter because you already made a lot of money during that time. But for somebody coming from the underground, like an independent filmmaker or independent author, like I am, well, then good luck. With no social ring, this is just odd also. I mean, is it all about just money? You know, I don't have enough money to promote it. Anyway, it's a good book. Please support independent art. It's really gonna die if people just ignore it. You know, celebrities don't need more money. They have enough money. CNN, MSNBC, they don't need more money. They already have plenty. They're already swimming in cash. So just think about that. Just wanted to mention that I'm recently I joined Fiverr. So if you need some kind of book covers or you need voiceovers in Russian, English, or French, then please find me there. It's not that difficult. I usually pop up quite easily. And the charge is pretty reasonable for what it is anyway. All right, so today what I'm going to talk about is mental health care. So the first thing I'd like to mention is that I am not a doctor, so just bear that in mind, although my partner is, like actually a doctor, although not a mental health doctor, not a psychiatrist or psychologist. But myself, I have experience with mental health care. I actually have chronic depression. I'm on top of that, I'm extremely sick right now. Actually, I recently just dropped under 60 kilos, and for my height, it's extremely low. So, you know, I don't want to play the morbid card too much, but I just don't know how long I'm gonna be around. So I'm starting to wonder about my legacy. What exactly am I leaving behind? I have no children, and so the only thing I can leave behind is my art and my knowledge. So, but for that, people have to engage. So that has to happen. And so I do have chronic depression, and I will talk about it more as we go on. But people really don't understand depression, and that's just a shame because a lot of people are misunderstood and they have to suffer a long time because of society basically not understanding the actual problem. Before we start, just a little bit of a light note as always before we go into the show. It's just a meme I found. It's pretty funny. So this guy throws the ball to the dog and says, you know, chase the ball, and doesn't throw the ball. The dog chases the ball, the invisible ball, I should say. And the guy says, stupid dog. And then the same thing happens with the person. So he says, go son, chase your dreams. You can do anything. And then the kid runs away chasing his invisible dream. And the old man just says, stupid kid. So I just thought it's pretty funny. And, you know, I live in Japan. And a lot of the English teachers that come to Japan, they kind of promote this whole American idea. So in America, having a dream it seems to be really important for some reason. But what happens is that usually people set themselves such a dream that is absolutely unreachable. And so in the end, actually, they get depressed because they put their entire life's effort into this one thing, and it just collapses in front of their eyes. And that may also result in depression. So I just thought it's pretty relevant to the discussion today. Hey bro, what's up? Okay, I'm gonna start with this. This is an article that was posted on CNN, and then I'm gonna jump into another article. So just to compare how different countries are actually tackling the problem, or are they even tackling it at all? Let's see. So in the States, every day 22 veterans take their own lives. That's a suicide every 65 minutes. As shocking as the number is, it may actually be higher. Part of the problem, she says, is that there is no uniform reporting system for deaths in America. It's usually up to the funeral director or a coroner to enter veteran status and suicide on the death certificate. Veteran status is a single question on the death report, and there is no verification of it from the Defense Department or the VA. So birth and death certificates are the only... Let me reread that. Birth and death certificates are only as good as the information that is entered, Rich says. There is underreporting. How much? I don't know. So again, this is just facts. This is how it's going on. A recent analysis by News 21, an investigative multimedia program for journalist students, found that the annual suicide rate among veterans is about 30 for every 100,000 of the population, compared with the civilian rate of 14 per 100,000. The analysis of records from 48 states found that the suicide rate for veterans increased an average of 2.6% a year from 2005 to 2011. So just to put those dates into context, we're talking basically about the after the Iraq War, right in the middle of the Afghanistan War. Now the results are coming in, and the results are worrying. So more than double than the rate of civilian suicide. Nearly 1 in 5 suicides nationally is a veteran, even though veterans make up about 10% of the US population, the analysis found. More than 69% of all veteran suicides were amongst those 50 or older. Mental health professionals said one reason could be that these men give up on their life after their children are out of the house or a long-time marriage falls apart. They are also likely to be Vietnam veterans who returned from a war to a hostile public and an unresponsive VA. Combat stress was chalked up to being crazy, and many Vietnam veterans lived with ghosts in their heads without seeking help. So this point here is precisely what I wanted to mention before. People don't understand depression really, or PTSD. Even in my family, like my mother, for example, doesn't really still get it. She thinks, oh, you're just feeling down, you're just feeling sad. All you need is to go outside and just go for a walk and get fresh air, whatever that means, as if we have fresh air living even in an urban area like that. But anyway, that's not the point. The point is not about having walks or having good sex or diet, although, of course, all these things help, but this is a deeper problem. Everything can be absolutely okay, in general speaking. I mean, you can have enough financial security, your friends are doing well and you're doing well, your health is good, but you're feeling bad. And that is not something you can just show up, to a doctor and tell him about that. It's very, very difficult to kind of grasp that concept. And this particular point that they raise about Vietnam, it reminded me of this movie called Jacob's Ladder, and I just wanted to thank James for introducing me to that film in the first place, because I went over to his place once and I don't know, he was just playing the movie and I didn't really care at the time because usually when I sit down and watch another person's film, it's a bit difficult to get into it, but I did watch it by myself later on, and it's actually a really good movie. There's a lot of it's very creative. There's a lot of stuff that goes on, but the bulk of the story is this guy who comes back from Vietnam. He's seen absolute horrors there. He comes back to the States and he absolutely struggles to get back into regular rhythm. I don't think these people are able to just return to normal. There are certain things which you don't forget. if you see your people, if you see your close friends there in the battlefield being just torn apart to shreds, that's going to change you. That's just going to change you. That's a fact of life. You have to be some kind of almost a machine to be absolutely immune to these type of things, I guess. I just thought it would be relevant to mention this movie. Even though more older veterans are committing suicide, it's difficult to predict what the toll of America's newest wars will be. So that's, again, the article is a bit old, so we don't know the result of the constant perpetual wars that the US is plunging itself into. A survey by Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America showed that 30% of service members have considered taking their own life, and 45% said they know an Iraq or Afghanistan veteran who has attempted suicide. So that's scary. I just wanted to make a point here very quickly, by the way, since we're talking about the army. So I know there are people, well, I mean, there are Americans who are just very, you know, enthusiastic about the army and supporting the troops and all of that. But really, the question is, what exactly are you supporting? Because the U.S. government and other governments as well, okay, it's not, I'm not just talking, I'm not singling out the U.S., okay, but since we're talking about the U.S. here, really, you have to think about the impact of the, you know, the CIA's policies, the FBI's policies on international politics. You know, when you have a coup and you place a dictator in, like in Chile, in Pinochet, and then he goes around and kills tens of thousands of people because the CIA put him there, well, are you really proud of that? I mean, is that really something to, you know, to be happy about? And the same about the wars. So let's talk about the war in Iraq, which was a war for oil, okay? It's not about removing Saddam or anything like that, or bringing freedom. I mean, come on, that's a stupid propaganda line that they sold to the people. And the people bought it, for the most part, because old lessons never get learned, apparently. So, war for oil, that's Iraq. And Afghanistan was a war over drugs. It was a war for the pharmaceutical industrial complex. I mean, I could say, really. So you talk to the people there and they tell you, okay, so why did we go in Afghanistan? It's not to fight the terrorists. It's not to fight the 9/11 hijackers, because they didn't even come from Afghanistan. Most of these guys came from Saudi Arabia. And Saudi Arabia are our big buddies, apparently. Why? Because of oil. Again, it's all about the petrodollar. And Afghanistan was about the drugs. The Taliban started burning fields of opium, if I'm not wrong. And the American pharmaceutical companies couldn't have that because they need that. I mean, a lot of their products rely on it. So they forced their way into the war. Did anyone tell the people about that? No, of course not. They sold you the bullshit line that we have to go in there and fight terrorists. Like, you know, Osama is there, even though he wasn't. He was in Pakistan. Everything is propaganda. So be careful. People really don't learn the lessons of the past. It's incredible. You don't even need to spend a lot of time researching these things. It doesn't take a long time. You just have to put minimal effort. President Barack Obama says that there is a need to end this epidemic of suicide among our veterans and troops. In August 2012, he signed an executive order calling for stronger suicide prevention efforts. A year later, he announced $107 million in new funding for better mental health treatment for veterans with post-traumatic stress and traumatic brain injury, signature injuries of the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, of course. Well, first of all, I'm not sure exactly what this figure, 107 million, is and for how long it is. All I know is that when Reagan was president, he was an absolute bastard to the unions and to the mentally ill. He basically closed, well, even when he was a governor, he basically shut down mental clinics because it would save money. So basically, let's shut them down. Let's throw these, well, unstable people out in the streets, and that's going to be fun, right? Especially in America where everybody can get a gun easily. So that worked for saving money. So he said, oh, that's great. Let's just take it nationally now. So that started to happen on a national scale when he became a president. So a bunch of people were just thrown out of these mental institutes, and the country never really recovered from that. The effort is nowhere near what's necessary. And I mean, Obama, come on, we talked about him on the show already before. We did an in-depth analysis of his policies, and it's true that some policies are still kind of taking effect. I think, for example, Trump is benefiting from the job creation. That's not, his doing. That's probably most likely that is Obama's policies still in place and helping some people at least. But I mean, come on, Obama though, he expanded the wars. We went from 2 to 7. He ran out of bombs in Syria because he bombed it like crazy. And he made the banks bigger. Really, it's just a corporate tool. Once again, everybody, I think, most people, when Obama became president, were expecting big changes because, wow, this is the first black president and surely something is going to change. And really, not a lot changed. It's true, yeah, he had opposition. There was a lot of opposition, that's true. But at the beginning, they owned, I think, both the House and the Senate. And they couldn't pass anything really meaningful. Wanted to say something else, but I forgot. That's what happens sometimes. Okay, now I remember. Just cut it for the camera later. So there's this song by Tupac. I think it was made in the early 90s or something. It's called Changes. And in that song, he says that we ain't ready for a black president yet. And I'm sorry to say that, but I just don't think Obama was what would be considered a black president. I think, if it's a social warrior and advocating for change and social justice, really kind of responding to the people's need, well then okay, then fulfilled his promises, I guess. But we just didn't see that. We just saw a continuation of the corporate machine which is destroying America. So now let's talk about the UK. So we're talking about, just to compare two things, let's talk about the UK. This article comes from the Greater Manchester News. I actually lived in Manchester for 3 years, so I know it pretty well. I'm not really aware of the health situation, but let's talk about this. So the article's title is Mental Health Problems Are Killing People, but It's Getting Harder to Get Help. What's going on? In a special report, we look at the state of mental health services in Greater Manchester. It was once considered a taboo subject, but while many of us are now talking openly about mental health problems, treatment services are still struggling to keep up. Waiting months or even years to see a specialist, the frustration of negotiating the bewildering maze of mental health services and constantly being bounced around between different organizations. Okay, so again, this is in the UK. I'm actually not sure what the situation, say, in Japan is. But I guess in the UK they have a lot of these companies, organizations, and they all have their own fees, I suppose. But when you're depressed or you have PTSD or something like that, all you want is help. You don't have the time to go around and do market research, In an ideal world, sure, why not? But we don't live in an ideal world, far from it. And they do mention here that to see a specialist takes forever, and I know that from, okay, this does happen in Japan as well. I know this from one case in Canada because my friend was seeking help and he couldn't get it. For me, it was a bit different here because of certain connections. I was able to see a specialist, well, very quickly actually. But I don't think that's fair, though. I'm not saying, that's necessarily fair. I'm just saying that's the way it is. And for some reason Siri activated. I wasn't talking to the phone. I didn't even push the button, but I guess I am being spied on. So what's going on? NHS Mental Health Services has been underfunded for decades. Elizabeth Simpson, Service Director at mental health charity Manchester Mind, told the MEN. There is also a huge economic cost to poor mental health, and in Greater Manchester this is expected to reach £3.5 billion by 2021. It's thought 1 in 4 of us will experience mental health problems at some point in our lives. So again, this is not something rare, and there could be a host of various things that influence this. I actually believe, for example, that our current addiction to screens is gonna hurt us big time. It's just we don't have any data right now. We're all guinea pigs in this experiment. That's just one thing. Before we didn't do that, and now we do, and the research will take decades really to come out and see what happens. I think I'm showing it very strong effects of that, for sure. It's affecting me big time. I mean, at least on the health issue. Mental health problems, though, yeah, I mean, 25% of us, so 25% of the entire global population, that's a lot of people. Suicide is the biggest killer of men. Okay, I'm just pausing for a second here so that the stream can catch up a little bit. It seems to be going into the red. It's like a, what do you call it? An intermission in theater, I think. When you suddenly make a pause. Well, not suddenly, it's actually planned, but... Okay, maybe just to make it a little bit quicker. Just give it a minute. It needs to kind of balance itself out. Of course, everything will be cut in the edit later. Yeah, that's true. I could make an intermission screen, but it is just kind of jumping up and down suddenly. So switch off the camera. Okay, I'm gonna check here. Here it's all right still. Yeah, that's true actually. I noticed that, for example, when I lived in the Philippines, there was every time it rained, the internet speed just nosedived. It was just basically 56K speed or something. It was terrible. But I guess here my weather thing is showing a storm. I didn't see any. It was sunny when I looked out, but I guess something is coming, so it could be. Well, that's the cool thing about the live stream, is that you can kind of pause things like that. So there's this app, by the way. I'm going to do a free app promotion for people who are interested. It's called My Radar. It's a great app if you're into weather. It shows the wind patterns, which I find really interesting because it's very wild. It's a free app. You can get it. Of course, it shows the temperatures, but the coolest thing is that it shows the wind patterns. So usually when I see a swirly thing, even before it develops, I can pretty much identify what's going to become a typhoon or not. It needs to spin at a certain speed. If not, it's just not enough to build up. But yeah, it doesn't seem to be anything on this map right now. All right, anyway, let's get back to it. Looks like it's more stable now. All right, so 3, 2, 1. Suicide is the biggest killer of men under 49 in our region, and it's also the leading cause of death for people aged 15 to 29, according to the Greater Manchester Suicide Prevention Strategy published last year. And for every person who takes their own life, another 9 will attempt suicide. However, 2/3 of people who die by suicide are not in contact with mental health services. Gee, I wonder why. Perhaps it's because they can't get it. And even those that are in contact with mental health services are slipping through the cracks, at times with devastating consequences. So now it's talking about certain case studies. So we're going to talk about several people who had this experience. So this person, he was treated for his physical injuries, but Aliyah says he was then discharged and told to make an appointment with his GP to discuss his mental health problems. Aliyah, 39, told the MEN Bernage, I don't know, it could be French, so Bernage perhaps. No, but it's Bernage, I'm pretty sure. Raised Paul, who had suffered from mental health problems for much of his teenage and adult life, was then prescribed antidepressants, I have them too, and referred to mental health services. After an initial assessment, the services wrote to him to offer him more help. Aliyah believes Paul either never received the letter or due to his problems didn't respond. Well, again, this is the thing. Sometimes when you're in a depressed state, you get certain letters, but you really don't feel like opening them and reading them. Man, sometimes it's even hard to get out of bed when you have depression. So talk about reading stuff. That's even harder. And because he didn't reply, mental health services automatically discharged him. 2 months later, he was dead. Paul had been asking for help his whole life. But mental health is not like cancer. It is not like a physical ailment, which, as I said, it can't be identified under a magnifying glass. So you just end up being pushed from pillar to post. He was found hanging and was told to go see his GP. If you break your leg, you don't get told to see your GP. I really don't know why there isn't more health for mental health. Okay, let me reread that. I really don't know why there isn't more help for mental health. Suicide is one of the biggest killers of men under 40, and it's getting worse. There really needs to be more hands-on help, or there is going to be an epidemic. Yeah, so the antidepressant, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. For me, I think the one that I have to take it 3 times a day or something, and maybe the first day or 2 it doesn't do too much, but by the 3rd day I start to feel the effect, and what it does basically is make my brain really numb. So it's definitely a medication that kills a certain feeling. Especially when I was writing the book, I told my partner, okay, I can't take antidepressants right now because it makes me numb. And to write a story, to write about characters and their ordeals, I really need my full emotions, my full range of emotions. So sorry, I can't do medicine while I'm doing certain work. Dedicated mental health expertise was described as scarce, and there was also a lack of mental health expertise in GP, surgeries, and A&E departments, while delays in getting access to the right care were consistently reported. Anyone seeking help was also faced with a confusing number of organizations, the strategy published in 2016 reported. So this is about another person. He said, in fairness, my GP has been good, but trying to get help from other mental services has been really difficult. It took about 20 months from me first going to the doctor before I got referred to CBT sessions. I had 3 lots of CBT sessions, but after that, it just fell off the cliff and I was back to square one. There is no help. So again, it goes back to the thing. It takes ages to see a specialist. Can you imagine this? Okay, so for people who don't understand, for example, in my case, what happens is that if I get a strong depression, it's very sudden. It doesn't build up, over weeks, and so every day you feel worse and worse. No, it is quite sudden. And the way that it works on me, anyway, is I actually start to hear this kind of hammer that goes in and bumps into my head, and it's getting stronger and stronger and stronger. And the pain is intense, but yeah, it's not it is hard to describe it to a medical professional unless that medical professional is trained in mental health services. But if you just talk to a regular doctor, it's very unlikely that that person will understand what you're talking about. He might just say you're imagining things. So anyway, in my case, for example, if I had to wait 20 months, I can't wait 20 months. Man, that's over a year. I mean, are you kidding me? He said, I thought to myself, if I'm going through this, if I'm struggling to get help, then there must be plenty of other people in the same boat. Well, that's definitely true. I want a group to be a safety net for Rochdale. I want it to be a place where anyone can come and talk about what they're going through and share tips on how they cope while they're waiting to get professional help. I'm not angry with the NHS that people like me are having to do this, because I think it's an issue for society as a whole. And the next part is very important. It's too big a problem for any one organization to handle. As a society, we have to be more caring and compassionate. There has to be a behavioral change, and that's really difficult. It won't happen overnight. People say all things about the internet, how amazing it is and how it opened the doors. I don't think it opened as many doors as they believe it did. What it definitely opened the door to is a lot of hatred. There is so much vitriol hate on the internet these days. And, if you're saying some crappy ideas, okay, then it's fair that people criticize you. But people criticize others for everything these days. We're creating this culture, and it's absolutely insane. Well, yeah, that's the thing, right? I mean, every healthcare has ups and downs. I think the US system has the most downs because people literally go broke if they seek help. I mean, man, people don't even call the ambulance because they can't afford it. I think a recent survey found that most Americans can't afford just a couple of hundreds of dollars of surgery. So there's that. So Canadian healthcare is not great, but neither is the Japanese. I do think that at least the free part of it is good, but some people really can't afford to wait, so there's that. Another person here, Georgia, 24, from Rushholm, has struggled with depression and anxiety since being a teenager. She moved to Manchester aged 18 to study at university and has been in and out of treatment ever since. Well, that's probably because of university. Yeah, don't worry there. I mean, man, university can be a traumatic experience for sure. Georgia, who asked us not to print her surname, told the MEN the mental health system is a maze, and the more you need help, the harder it is to find. It's really disheartening, and I know a lot of people who are in the same position. Georgia, who grew up in the Midlands, says her typical doctor's appointment lasts only about 3 minutes and ends with the GP trying to fob me off with a new prescription or just up my dose. There is no attempt to get to the root cause of my problems, she says. Well, actually, this happens in Japan as well. Depends which doctor you go to see. But some doctors, I mean, okay, let's face it, even in here, all the hospitals, it's a business. They all try to make money. So if you're a doctor and let's say you see 100 patients per day and most of them get a prescription, and the business is doing well. You're going to sell a lot of medicine, right? And if, on the other hand, though, if you only see 10 patients and maybe like 2 or 3 need medicine, the business is going to lose money. So it is a business, even in Japan. Despite what people might say, the problems like that still exist here as well. They all try to sell a product. It's all about selling you the product. It's not about seeing you for a long time or not. It's all about the medicine. The money is in the medicine. The money is not in the cure. Yeah, it's insane. I mean, it does take a long time. And in my case, for example, here it's very difficult because I feel very isolated, obviously, and a lot of foreigners in Japan feel that way, especially, you know, we don't know the language, and there are many reasons why I didn't learn the language. One reason was time, and now it's health, because I can barely go out. So we feel very isolated. When you're isolated, that's a kind of a trigger to make you just feel more down. So it's not an ideal situation to be in. It was then, Georgia says, the support stopped. Since March, I've been trying to self-refer back to mental health services. Twice I've had a letter saying I've been discharged from the service because I didn't reply to a letter they claimed to have sent me saying I needed to book an appointment within 14 days. This is kind of an aside story, but I actually had trouble with my bank account. I had a bank account with HSBC, and sometimes they would send me letters, and the letters asks me to reply within 14 days, but I get the letter 14 days later. So basically, when the letter comes here, it's already too late to reply. This is how the system is built up against the people. It's all on purpose. It's absolutely on purpose. There is nothing there by accident, okay? So I'm just saying that because, again, it's a very similar kind of situation here. But I never got the original letters. I just got back to square one and start all over again. It's exhausting for me. I have a job, I have a flat, I have friends and a boyfriend who help me, but imagine if I didn't have any of those things and I was having a suicidal episode. I still definitely need help. I still have serious depression and anxiety, but unfortunately it's falling to my friends and my boyfriend to help me deal with it. I'm not getting any professional help. You just go around and round in circles. There is a barrier every step of the way. So why is the situation so dire? Because the NHS in the UK is having issues. So the number of mental health beds has fallen by 8,000 since 2010, forcing people to travel further to get the right care. But traveling further is not so simple for some people. It's not just, okay, for example, in my case, I can easily get on a bus and then a train, and I can pretty much, I'm connected to everywhere. But if you live in a remote area, and let's say you don't drive a car, then it's not just a given to travel somewhere. Earlier this year, I spoke in Parliament about a constituent who was told the nearest available psychiatrist bed for her son was in West Sussex, a 450-mile round trip from her home in Manchester. 450 miles in both, I mean a round trip, that's a very, very long distance. That, I mean, if you drive a car there, you obviously have to pay for the fuel and stuff like that. So you have to kind of think about the other things as well. In terms of improving access to psychological therapies, IAPT, we have seen a 26% increase in the number of people of receiving help from Manchester's services. There has been an overall reduction of waiting times by 13%, and recovery rates have improved by 24%, meaning more people treated sooner and with better outcomes. More people are accessing psychological therapy for conditions such as anxiety and depression, and between April and July 2018, over 5,000 people accessed treatment compared to 4,200 in the same period last year. So things are getting better, but it's a very incremental change, and it's a slow change, and a lot of people are waiting for help, and they're still going to be waiting for quite a while. And if you are in the UK, if you have depression, anxiety, PTSD, whatever, these type of cases, there are some numbers here that can help you, so please try to talk to people. There are online groups that can help. There are numbers you can call and actually talk to people. Sometimes just talking to somebody is good. Some people are so isolated and just don't talk to anybody. So try to talk to people. If you want to pause the video, go ahead and write them down. And there is a second list here. It just continues. Again, this is just for the UK, but you know, again, if you have some problems like that, try to seek help. Okay, and that's all for today's show. I hope it was educative. Oh man, should probably use the right words. Okay, that's all for today's show. I hope it was educational. I hope you learned something. I mean, that's the whole point of the show. Well, first of all, it's to interact with people, hopefully. So, you know, there's a big chat window here. It's pretty funny. It's empty. Only one person is commenting all the time. And I just wanted to say, like, you're not alone. Some people really think that, you know, it's the end and there's nobody there, but the world has over 7 billion people, and I just always feel that some people never meet the right people. We don't have this opportunity because, you know, how? What mechanism are you going to use to interact with other people, especially like strangers? But I think it's a shame because a lot of people have things to offer and there's just no opportunity to meet each other. So yeah, I don't know. In conclusion, I would say don't give up. You're not alone. Many people have these issues. There are certain ways to cope with it. Might work for you, might not work for you. But the more information you have, the better. So anyway, I hope it helps. And next week there will be no shows because I have to edit a trailer for a movie and I really need time to do that. So we'll be back in 2 weeks. See you. I can keep rolling. I mean, I can always cut it later in the editing. This is not easy. A lot of people might think that, you know, this is just some guy who turns on the camera and talks, but this is very complicated to bring, especially your own experiences into the equation. I'm just gonna keep it going for a little bit. Maybe some people have some comments or something like that. Just noticed that I had some double windows open here. That's okay. All right. Behind the scenes. Well, yeah. I mean, it's just not for long. I want to do some other stuff sometimes. I mean, but that's probably towards like winter vacation, more kind of general stuff. I mean, maybe kind of show off the bedroom and stuff like that. I have a lot of posters there, and it would be cool to have just more intro. I'm still working on that 3D character, by the way. I made a lot of progress yesterday, but if you're talking about making the character look realistic, then I have to say it's pretty difficult. I mean, the model itself is never gonna look fantastic. I mean, it looks pretty good, but it does look not like a real person. But hey, I'm gonna get it pretty close, I guess. Almost done with it, actually. Just need to add shadows. Shadows are missing still, mostly. Yeah. I don't know what it is about, like, human faces and, let's say, a 3D computer face. And I mean, I've seen some some computer animation looks amazing and looks extremely real. I don't have the tools to make it like that, but for kind of lower end stuff, I wonder what is the difference between like a real human face and a computer face. It's not, obviously it's not things like the blur, because nobody's blurry in real life. Shadows and highlights, it could be, but I think actually it's something to do with the texture resolution. I think this human skin, again, talking about low-end 3D renderers, I think the human skin just has a very rich texture, and yeah, I haven't really found a way to translate that. What I do is, like, I have this trick, and I just used it quite recently on the on my picture with Mina, and so what I did is that I actually found a skin texture on the internet, and it's pretty good. It's, you know, high res stuff, and so what I do is that I use it and I would mask it out. So for example, if I work on my forehead, for example, so I would just make a shape there. I blend it in using the feather, and that actually looked pretty good. You reduce the opacity to about 30-ish, and it does work. It does add this type of extra element. That one was pretty good actually, but I did use my real face, so maybe that's why it captured more information or something. And yesterday I actually had another audio work offer, but I had to turn it down because, well, it's like there's this Disney movie, I think. I think it's a Disney movie anyway. The Beast, Beauty and the Beast. There you go. And so there's this character, right? The what do you call that thing? The candlelight. And it talks in a certain way, let's say. And the people wanted me to do a voiceover like that, with a basically in English but with a French accent. But I told them that, okay, well, if I do an accent, whether it's in French or Russian, then I basically have to fake it. It's not going to be like an authentic accent. I can speak French, like pure French, I mean. I can speak purely Russian and purely English. But when to mix it up, though, that's difficult. So yeah, I don't know how much they were offering, of course. I don't think I missed on much. Anyway, that's kind of freelancing. You know, I don't have to accept every job. Mm. Well, actually, I was not calling you, and you're coming anyway. Wait, I know. It's they want their dinner, so they're starting to act up. Tia. Hmm. Chi. Chi. Well, if you want, you can try to come here, but good luck under this angle. Okay, just wait. I'm done very soon. Then it It's your dinner time. Wait. And you picked up that puff I threw down. That's how it gets back to me later. You keep giving it back to me. They demand food, yes. Well, it's funny actually with cats because, well, first of all, of course, each cat has their own character, just like people. But the way that they approach us is so different. An example, like for me in the morning, well, okay, I wake up actually pretty late. It depends on the day, but wait, yeah. Well, anyway, usually I wake up pretty late. I mean, sometimes it can be 1 or 2 p.m. Actually, if I start my day around 2 o'clock, that's not bad. I find that if I wake up earlier and I go to bed late anyway, wow, it's so much time, and sometimes too much. But anyway, so in the morning, there's the puff again. They never come to me, for example. So that's pretty funny. They never ask me food. So I can sleep in peace. But they do ask my partner, though, always, very early. Oh man, they start like 6 o'clock in the morning or something. Wait. What? There's no space for you here. Oh, really? Oh, really? You're a bit low for the camera, so... well, at least there you go. That's good enough. Enjoy your second of fame. There are like certain things they do only to me, which is also pretty interesting. The way that they show their affection is different from person to person, so I don't even do anything special, really. I mean, you know, I don't like spoil them or anything like that, but for some reason they like to show their affection more towards me. Yeah. Okay, well, I think I'm gonna end it here for today. Obviously, I'm gonna have to cut that out later. So, for those who are watching, apparently there's 4 people. Thank you for watching. I hope it was good. And, well, yeah, next week I'm busy, so I'll be back in about 2 weeks or so. Well, anyway, I'll keep you posted. Depends on my health as well. If I just feel like death, then of course I'm not gonna do it. So I do suffer while doing this stuff. I'm just saying. All right. Anyway, that's it for today, guys. So see you next time.